event. The atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Sunday Night Football, not really much of a matchup here, and the Bills looked so good up until this point, and, you know, to me, it's probably like a one-off for them.
The basic thing you have to do against the Ravens, force them to pass and try to use their weapons downfield, get them behind, because if you can do that, then it takes Derrick Henry a little bit out of the game. But if you get them with momentum coming out of the gate, getting a long touchdown run to the first play.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Hello and welcome to a Football Friday live right here on the early line on SportsGrid and all across the SportsGrid network. That includes sportsgrid.com/watch, where you can find your favorite destination to consume everything all across the grid. He is Joe Ranieri. I am Ben Stevens. We are here together for the next 3 hours up until 11 a.m. Eastern Time to get you set for your football weekend. Not the most robust Saturday slate in college football, but everything you need to know, and a fantastic Friday on the docket in CFP. And, of course, a preview of each and every game across the Sunday slate in the National Football League, week number 5. Our first game abroad, across the pond in London, and week 5 got started last night. In fact, what a Thursday night of sports it was. Something about October, Joe Ranieri, that we love. Playoff baseball on the division series. Pete Alonso plays hero last night in Milwaukee, and an overtime thriller in Atlanta, and a crucial NFC South showdown that came down to the extra session, and Kirk Cousins swag surfing the Falcons to a victory. What a Thursday it was. Hopefully it's just a small precipice to what we are going to see this weekend.
Spot on, Ben. I mean, one of the best Thursday night slates across the sports landscape that we've seen. Usually one of those games is like Snooze Fest USA, and boy, oh boy, did we get right down to the wire in both games. You got to love urgency. First weekend upon us here in October. You got to love it, Ben.
You absolutely do. There is so much to get to, so let's dive right in. The start of week number 5 of the 2024 NFL regular season, and it went to overtime and got a little bit wacky last night in the A in a crucial NFC South showdown between the Falcons and the Bucs. In overtime, Kirk Cousins leads a game-winning drive once again for the second time this year for Atlanta in OT. A 45-yard strike that was nearly deflected into the welcoming arms of Kadero Hodge, who does the rest of the work, sprinting into the end zone as the Falcons win 36-30, Joe, in OT. They cover as a 2.5-point home favorite, a total of 43.5. sky's over. It was over midway through the third quarter. It did not even hold water last night to staying under, as we had seen in the previous 3 short week Thursday night football games to start off this year. The Falcons winning on the very last play of the football game each of the past 2 weeks against a divisional foe.
Anybody still curious as to why the Falcons gave Kirk Cousins a $180 million guaranteed contract? Look at Exhibit A, the game last night. One of his best, maybe the best career-defining game of Kirk Cousins' career. And he's had a lot of good ones, man, but last night was vintage Kirk Cousins, and it's exactly why Arthur Blank wrote that check to him.
2-1 in prime time this year for a man that has had to battle that narrative the entirety of his time in the National Football League. You saw the tremendous numbers. More than 500 yards, 509 throwing last night, and 4 touchdowns. His first game with at least 3 TDs so far in a Falcons uniform. A complete breakdown and recap in what it means for the NFC South title race, even early on in the first weekend of October, coming in our next segment. But Joe, it was a fantastic Thursday night, just not because of a walk-off winner in Atlanta, but a come-from-behind victory for the New York Mets. In the top of the 9th, down 2-0 against Milwaukee, with closer Devin Williams in for the Brew Crew. Runners on the corners for New York's Pete Alonso in a laser beam over the field wall. Pete Alonso, a 3-run home run that puts the Mets in front, and then in the home half of the 9th, Francisco Lindor seals it with an unassisted double play. The New York Mets come out of nowhere to come back and win the winner-take-all Game 3 in Milwaukee in the wild card round, 4-2. The Mets advance to take on a divisional foe in the division series. They will take on Philadelphia starting tomorrow.
And he's the first, and I couldn't believe this, man, but he's the first player in Major League Baseball history to hit a go-ahead home run in the 9th inning or later in one of these winner-take-all games when his team is trailing. I mean, it was unprecedented, and who he hit it off of was even more impressive for Pete Alonso and the New York Mets.
The fact they even got on base, they had 2 hits entering the 9th inning. Frankie got on, Brandon Nimmo got on as well with a base knock, and then Pete Alonso. Joe, the wall in right at American Family Field juts out ever so slightly, so it's about 337 feet. I was not sure the ball was flying over the wall, but Pete Alonso knew off the crack of the bat. Historic and heroic, as you mentioned. The first ever MLB postseason come from behind home run, a go-ahead home run in the 9th inning or later when a team is trailing. That is crazy to imagine. The Mets in the Grimace era advancing to the NLDS to take on Philadelphia. Other big MLB news last night. Terry Francona coming out of retirement after calling it quits a year ago with the Cleveland Guardians. The guy who has been a skipper in MLB for 23 years is set to become the manager of the Cincinnati Reds next season.
Well, I guess that means, as far as I knew, he was in failing health, and that was kind of why he stepped down from the Guardians, and that, he wasn't doing all that well from a health perspective, but I'm guessing all is well if he's ready to go back to the grind. I mean, that's kudos to one of the all-time great baseball guys, certainly managers in the history of the game. So I'm glad to see him back in. Got a young team in Cincinnati. He might just exactly be the kind of guy they need.
You would think so, Joe. Tito is back in MLB, 23 years as a manager with Philadelphia, of course, snapping the curse of the Bambino with the Boston Red Sox and leading the Red Sox to 2 World Series. Another pennant in 2016 in the American League with the Cleveland Guardians, where he spent the last 11 years, called it a career, we thought, at the end of the 2023 campaign. Some more NFL news to get you set for the rest of week number 5 after the overtime thrilling start yesterday in Atlanta. We're still not entirely sure, Joe, the overall severity of the knee injury to the Chiefs, Rashee Rice, who suffered the knee injury last Sunday against the Chargers. What we do know, KC has elected to place Rice on injured reserve, meaning he's out for at least a month.
It's terrible. I know, and you saw the comments from Mahomes too. It says he feels like garbage there, having banged into his knee, and it's just it's a terrible situation. And you got to wonder what else could go wrong injury wise for the Chiefs here. They got a season worth of injuries in 4 weeks here.
A lot of offensive woes for KC. Elsewhere, a Las Vegas Raiders head coach Antonio Pierce disciplined yesterday for his time as the associate head coach at Arizona State, an 8-year show cause. I love when the NCAA shows its teeth after the guy's no longer even in the sport.
Yeah, and has no intention of going back either. So, yeah, kudos to you, NCAA. Well done. Really dropping the hammer.
Sounds like a fun time. COVID dead period violations brought recruits' parents to gentlemen's clubs and took them out for lavish dinners.
Yeah.
Hey, if you could be wined and dined by Antonio Pierce, who says no? Speaking of college football, a doubleheader on a Thursday to set the stage for a great slate on Friday. Jordan McLeod and Texas State go on the road, pick up a 38-17 victory over Troy. They cover as a 2-touchdown favorite. Sam Houston, 20-point win against UTEP. And Joe, did you know? It's the opening day of the National Hockey League season out in Prague. That's the Czech Republic. The Sabres, a road ice favorite, a Czech ice favorite against the New Jersey Devils. Devils are the favorite, excuse me.
And who's that defending champ again?
Florida Panthers, I suppose. Preseason hockey continues. More around the NFL next.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people. What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot takes, hot takes.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Simply put, the only way to bet this is over-under win total. I love Tyronn Lue. I think he's one of the 5 best coaches in the league. But my dear friend George Sorless told us to me a long time ago, you can't win if you don't got the talent. Unfortunately, I don't think the Clippers have the talent to match up.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the book.
Would it make you feel better as a bettor or as a sports fan if they said after the game we were trying to cover the spread?
Oh, God. To say it out loud? Oh, my God, no.
So what,
to say it out loud? Oh, my God. You can't say that out loud. No, you can't even. You can't do that.
Okay, so what is the big deal either way?
Oh, play the game the right way.
The Bostonian versus the book.
Sunday Night Football, not really much of a matchup here. And the Bills looked so good up until this point. And, to me, it's probably like a one-off for them.
The basic thing you have to do against the Ravens, force them to pass and try to use their weapons downfield, get them behind. Because if you can do that, then it takes Derrick Henry a little bit out of the game. But if you get them with momentum coming out of the gate, getting a long touchdown run on the first play.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Live right here on this Football Friday on the early line on SportsGrid. We will get to everything you need to know around October now to the division series in MLB. But we start, of course, with a recap of the opening game of week number 5 in this NFL season. Last night, in Atlanta. NFC South showdown and a crucial one between the Falcons and the Bucs. Atlanta, a victory in its opening NFC South game of the year last week against New Orleans on a walk-off Younghoe Koo field goal. How about upping that to go to overtime and handle the Buccaneers? What a wild game it was, Joe, on a Thursday in the A. Just to tell the tale, it was high scoring from the start, which is not what we had seen in the opening 3 weeks of a short week Thursday night football game. It was 24-17 at the break. The Buccaneers in front. We went over the pregame total of 43.5 on the second offensive possession of the third quarter. And this is how we get to overtime. And this is where things got a little bit wacky. Early in the fourth quarter, Chase McLaughlin hits a 53-yard field goal to give the Bucs a 30-27 lead. Atlanta tries to respond. Younghoe Koo has a field goal attempt blocked. All right, Tampa now in control. About 6.5 minutes remaining. The Buccaneers just need to ice the clock, and they will win a huge road divisional game. They're driving into Atlanta territory, nearing the red area. The rookie, Bucky Irving, coughs up the football. The Falcons recover. There is hope for Kirk Cousins in prime time. They get to the 2-minute warning. First play following the 2-minute warning. Oh no, what we have seen out of Kirk so many times, a costly mistake in the most important spot of the game, an interception. The Bucs have it at Atlanta's 20-yard line. Game should be over. The Buccaneers lose 14 yards. They have to then punt the football, and it goes for a touchback with just over a minute remaining and no timeouts. Kirk Cousins shows you the more positive aspect of what he has been known for in his NFL career. Minute 14, no timeouts, drives the length of the field, spikes it with a second left on the clock for Younghoe Koo to connect from more than 50 yards out, Joe, to send the game to OT. The Falcons get the ball first. They score a touchdown on their opening offensive possession. Kadero Hodge grabs it and sprints the rest of the way 45 yards into the end zone. Atlanta walks it off in OT. If you're tired, if you're exhausted from just hearing me describe the game last night, that's how wonderful of a thriller we had in OT in Atlanta. The Falcons victorious 36-30.
So much for those primetime unders. Not so much last night. I think there was just one punt in the first half alone, and that was by the Falcons. I mean, it was a great back and forth game, and Tampa Bay just could not stop the passing attack of Kirk Cousins, which is why he threw for over 500 yards and over 50 attempts. But to me, this all came down to situational awareness, Ben, in the final 2 minutes, and you talked about it there. The David interception was on a 4th and 15. Had he just smacked the ball down, not intercepted it, they would have taken the ball over at the Atlanta 20-yard line. Instead, they ended up taking it over on the 35-yard line and then proceeded to lose 13 yards, rather, in the next couple of plays. A holding penalty. Rashid Weiss lost a couple of yards. Bucky Irving lost a yard on third down. And now Tampa ended up losing a total of 14 yards after the interception. Could not try a field goal and instead had to punt, and the rest is, as they say, history. So, unfortunately, great interception, Levante David. I would have much rather you have just batted the ball down and taken the ball over at the 20-yard line.
The Atlanta Falcons, Joe, this is why you acquire Kirk Cousins, for what we saw last night. 58 attempts, 509 passing yards, a Falcons franchise record, by the way, 4 passing touchdowns. Joe, when we were looking at the props yesterday, getting ready for Thursday Night Football, both quarterbacks had a passing touchdowns number of 1.5, and the over was plus money. Not expecting a ton of offense short week Thursday Night Football game. Baker Mayfield over as well with 3 touchdown tosses, just less than 200 yards through the air. Baker entered last night with the second most pass TDs in the National Football League with 8. If anybody was going to do it, it was going to be him, not Kirk Cousins, still looking a little bit shaky from coming back from the torn Achilles. midway through last season. 4 touchdowns to only 4 interceptions. But then last night, he showed us what he can do. We saw what this Atlanta offense can be, something that I had been waiting for all year long. Their first over of the year, Joe, after 3 consecutive unders, came last week against New Orleans when Younghoe Koo hit a 58-yard field goal with 2 ticks remaining to win a last-second thriller against an NFC South opponent. But their first over last week, Joe, without a single offensive touchdown. Not the case last night. Kirk Cousins led a game-tying drive with 1:14 on the clock in regulation and 0 timeouts, and a game-winning drive to start off overtime. With the game-winning drive against Philadelphia in Week 2, that's a game-time drive and 2 game-winning drives already in his first 5 games in a Falcons uniform. That's worth $180 million.
Every bit of it, and they got to see it in prime time last night. And unfortunately, nobody's going to talk about it, Ben, but another very efficient, great game by Baker Mayfield, 19 of 24, buck 83 touchdowns and no picks. Basically, against anybody else, Ben, that's probably enough to get the job done for the Bucs. Unfortunately, you ran into Kirk Cousins and all those weapons who are finally starting to click, and they got a very winnable game coming up again next week against Carolina.
We will talk about, Joe, where it leaves the Buccaneers, because they will feel as though they coughed up an opportunity. Bucky Irving literally coughed up an opportunity to win a huge divisional road game. But you mentioned the offensive pieces for Atlanta. Drake London, the leading receiver this year, 154 yards and a touchdown. Darnell Mooney, an offseason pickup, more than the century mark and 2 touchdowns. Look at Kyle Pitts' numbers. 7 grabs for 88 yards after a goose egg a week ago. That is the Atlanta offense we expected. More for Thursday night next.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people. What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Simply put, the only way to bet this is over under win total. I love Tyronn Lue. I think he's one of the 5 best coaches in the league. But my dear friend George Sorless told us to me a long time ago, you can't win if you don't got the talent. Unfortunately, I don't think the Clippers have the talent to match up.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
Would it make you feel better as a bettor or as a sports fan if they said after the game we were trying to cover the spread?
Oh, God. To say it out loud? Oh, my God, no.
So what,
to say it out loud? Oh, my God, you can't say that out loud. No, you can't do that.
Okay, so what is the big deal either way?
Oh, play the game the right way.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Sunday Night Football, not really much of a matchup here. And the Bills looked so good up until this point. And, to me, it's probably like a one-off for them.
The basic thing you have to do against the Ravens, force them to pass and try to use their weapons downfield, get them behind. Because if you can do that, then it takes Derrick Henry a little bit out of the game. But if you get them with momentum coming out of the gate, getting a long touchdown run on the first play.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
The joy of victory, the agony of defeat, how quickly it can change in the National Football League, as was on display to kick off week number 5 last night in Atlanta. The Falcons rally a dramatic comeback, a game-tying, and then game-winning drive led by Kirk Cousins in overtime. We'll talk about the Falcons in just a moment. But, Joe, you mentioned Baker Mayfield, 5 incompletions last night, 3 touchdowns. Sure, less than 200 yards, but clean football. They averaged nearly 6 yards per carry last night as an offense as well. Whether Rachaad White, who was the lead back, or Bucky Irving, they were making hay on the ground. But it was the rookie out of Oregon with a super costly mistake in the final few minutes of regulation. The Buccaneers were driving into Atlanta territory, just trying to pick up first downs and ice out the game. Bucky Irving fumbles. It's recovered by the Falcons. Kirk Cousins did then throw a pick, so maybe it's neutralized. But again, Tampa had the opportunity to control the game up by 3 and win a crucial divisional road test in Atlanta. The Buccaneers will feel, Joe, as though they let one slip away last night. And when you have these games, even on a short week on Thursday Night Football, maybe you're not expected to win as the road team, but when it's a divisional game, the importance is amped up. And Tampa let one squander last night a little bit in Atlanta.
Yeah, no, they really did. But, once again, the story is injuries here. And for the Tampa Bay secondary with no Winfield, and again, there were guys going down left and right in that game on the defensive side for the Bucs. That's a bunch of backups, Ben, in that secondary. And Kirk Cousins and the Atlanta Falcons recognized it, and they just picked them apart. It was one of the hardest things to handicap about this game coming into the week is because you just didn't have, the Falcons had offensive line injuries, the Bucs secondary defensive side of the ball without a ton of guys, and you're going, what are we going to get here? And what we got was a very entertaining game, but mostly because the Tampa Bay defense is totally in the hospital right now, and the Atlanta Falcons defense, let's face it, man, not exactly great either. So there could be room for improvement on both these teams defensively moving forward when they get healthy.
Ranieri, when you look at these two teams entering last night, both were fine against the pass. They were not being exposed in the opening month of the season. Both worse defending the run, and maybe that was going to be a component, getting Bijan Robinson back involved, the compelling backfield story for the Buccaneers. Would it be the rookie out of Oregon, Bucky Irving, leading the way? Would it be Rachaad White, who had become the lead back just a season ago for the Bucs? But Tampa was plagued by a bad secondary a year ago. 5th worst passing defense in the NFL. They gave up more than 500 yards last night to Kirk Cousins. So here is the updated outlook for both of these teams following Thursday Night Football. The Falcons were the preseason favorites in the NFC South with a minus in front. They entered last night just a couple of cents in front of Tampa, but the Bucs had the better record at 3-1. Now, both of these teams are 3-2. A little bit of odds regression against the Buccaneers, but now let's go to the positive aspect of the victory last night for the Falcons. Back above 500, 2 wins over divisional foes, and by far their biggest tests in the division in the last 2 weeks. In the closing seconds, courtesy of a 58-yard field goal by Younghoe Koo a week ago at home against New Orleans. And, of course, last night, coming back, tying the game, Younghoe Koo, and winning it in OT. The Falcons, Joe, now relative to the rest of the division, a relatively short favorite at plus 115 to win the NFC South title.
And I think all of this is going to change, man, by the time we get to the end of this month here. Some big games coming up for both these teams. It's really a 3-way race with the Carolina Panthers in a position to play spoiler down the road, too, to all 3 of those teams. So definitely worth keeping an eye on. I think it's going to be a very competitive coin flip type of division here.
We have seen that be the case for the NFC South. They have failed to get multiple teams into the postseason since 2020, when the Bucs were a wild card team. The Saints won the division. And, of course, Tampa ended up winning a Super Bowl that season with Tom Brady. Carolina at 19-1, a long price, but how competitive can they be in divisional games? That's what we'll find out next week. The Falcons take on the Panthers. The Saints play Monday night hosting the Kansas City Chiefs, and then it's New Orleans and Tampa in the Big Easy next week. So a duo of divisional games in this division in week number 6. Elsewhere on a Thursday night, October baseball next.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people. What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Simply put, the only way to bet this is over/under win total. I love Tyronn Lue. I think he's one of the 5 best coaches in the league. But my dear friend George Sorless told us to me a long time ago, you can't win if you don't got the talent. Unfortunately, I don't think the Clippers have the talent to match up.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
Would it make you feel better as a bettor or as a sports fan if they said after the game we were trying to cover the spread?
Oh, God. To say it out loud? Oh, my God, no.
So what,
no to say it out loud? Oh, my God. You can't say that out loud. No, you can't even. You can't do that.
Okay, so what is the big deal either way?
Oh, play the game the right way.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Sunday Night Football, not really much of a matchup here. And the Bills looked so good up until this point. And, to me, it's probably like a one-off for them.
The basic thing you have to do against the Ravens, force them to pass and try to use their weapons downfield, get them behind. Because if you can do that, then it takes Derrick Henry a little bit out of the game. But if you get them with momentum coming out of the gate, getting a long touchdown run on the first play.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
What a Thursday it was in early October. Many of us will remember October 3rd, 2024 for a very long time. A significant date for some, as we saw last night in Atlanta, overtime between the Falcons and the Buccaneers to kick off Week 5. And in a winner-take-all game number 3 last night in Milwaukee, the only wild card series we have seen so far in the expanded postseason since 2022 began, Joe, in October, to reach a decisive winner-take-all game 3. It lived up to the hype. It did not disappoint, unless maybe you're a fan of the Brewers. 2-0 last night in the top of the 9th. Milwaukee in front. The Mets offense stagnant. Only 2 base knocks the entirety of the game. It should have been over rather quickly. Devin Williams, the outstanding closer who only had 1 blown save the entirety of the season, on the bump for the Brew Crew. Francisco Lindor gets on. Brandon Nimmo moves Lindor over with a base knock. Runners on the corners for Pete Alonso, who before his at-bat last night, Joe, dating back to the final week of the regular season, was 5 for his last 34, slumping at the dish, connects with one, a laser over the right field wall. Would it carry? It did. The New York Mets then plate another courtesy of an RBI of Starling Marte, and then Francisco Lindor turns an unassisted double play to shut the door on Milwaukee in the home half of the 9th. The Mets victorious in Game 3 of its wild card set against the Milwaukee Brewers, 4-2, coming from behind. They were the underdog in the game. They advanced to the NLDS to take on Philadelphia with that miraculous 4-2 win last night in Milwaukee.
It was really what playoff baseball is all about, and we're starting to get a sense here when it comes to the New York Mets. Boy, they're just never really out of it, huh? I mean, that's now a couple of games here in which, my goodness, do not shut off a Mets playoff game in the eighth or ninth inning, whatever you do. They have the flair for the dramatic. We've seen teams like this in the past, Ben, in postseason that ride that right through. I mean, baseball's a funny game. And boy, oh boy, when you start getting into a situation like with what the Mets are, where they're never out of it the eighth or ninth, they always believe they can win. Boy, they can really parlay that into some postseason success. And before we know it, they're fighting for a National League pennant and a shot at a World Series. Would not shock me because on paper, there was no reason for them to win that game last night at all. The bullpen of Milwaukee was terrible in 3 games, and it showed its ugly head with with the best closer, I can argue, in the National League, going up against Alonso, who had been struggling all series long, and you mentioned it going back even further than that, and yet you fork it over and let him. Any other outcome other than a 3-run home run you can live with. You can't live with a 3-run home run, and that's exactly what they got. Unreal.
The Mets rallied early in the opening game against the Brew Crew to win 8-4. Of course, it was the Brewers, Jackson Chourio, Garrett Mitchell in the home half of the 8th. 2 nights ago, rallying and coming back to win Game 2, 5-3, to set the stage for the decisive winner-take-all Game number 3. A game that will live on in Mets franchise history and, frankly, MLB postseason lore for a very long time. If you did not like the expanded postseason, you got it last night in the wild card round. That excitement that is October in playoff baseball cannot be beat. And, Joe, when we look at the New York Mets, it's incredibly interesting to categorize this team. That, of course, in June, the proud organization turned its season on its head. Grimace will have a statue outside of Citi Field. We'll see if one is also planted for the polar bear, Pete Alonso, when all is said and done. But this is a Mets team that started 24-33 through the opening 2 months of this season at the end of May. But from June 1st on to end out the regular season, 65-40, the best record in all of Major League Baseball. So perhaps we should not be overly shocked, albeit dramatic, to see the Mets advance to the NLDS. And maybe we should not be shocked to consider the Amazons a true pennant contender in the National League Division Series. Both sets that we have are going to be incredible. I mean, absolutely incredible. Quickly, Joe, one final point on last night. It was going to be fascinating to see the managerial decisions on the bump. Tobias Myers, the young 26-year-old rook for Milwaukee, who in his last regular season start went out there for 4 innings against the Mets on Saturday, allowed 1 hit, 0 earned runs, and struck out 5, what he would do in his first postseason nod on the mound. And he was sensational. 5 innings of shutout baseball against New York, only allowing 2 hits and striking out 5. On the other side, it was Jose Quintana, who was great as the veteran in just his 6th playoff appearance, despite being in the bigs for more than a decade. 6 innings of shutout work, only allowing 4 hits to Milwaukee and striking out 5. We got great starters in this game that set the stage for all the drama that we saw in the late innings.
Yeah, no, we did, and it didn't shock me with Quintana getting the call because the worst split for the Milwaukee hitters has been against lefties. And once again, they were very off balance most of the night. If it wasn't for the back-to-back home runs there in the 7th inning, which was kind of crazy from a couple of unsung guys, you just had the feeling because in the late stretches, except for that 9th inning, I mean, the Mets were 1-2-3, 1-2-3. They could not get anything going offensively. And then you know that Devin Williams is in the bullpen ready to close it out. You're like, wow, this is over. All right, have a great season. And voila, next thing you know, Devin Williams forks it over. He doesn't do that very often, Ben, but quite honestly, Game 1 and Game 3, I think you got to point to the Milwaukee bullpen letting them down in the postseason. That's why they didn't advance.
Joe, Devin Williams' numbers maybe not as outlandishly awesome as he has put up in his career in Milwaukee this season. But again, 18 saves and only one blown save opportunity throughout the entire course of the MLB regular season. If you are Pat Murphy and Milwaukee, you are feeling great because you're right. Jake Bauers, another pinch hit home run after Garrett Mitchell delivered the 2-run game win pinch hit home run on Wednesday night. And then you have Sal Frelick, the youngster for Milwaukee, adding on back-to-back. You have a 2-run lead that you built in the 7th after a great start from Tobias Myers. You are feeling picture perfect to only see it come crashing down. So the New York Mets, courtesy of Pete Alonso, Joe, and as you mentioned, a stat that kind of boggles the mind for how long Major League Baseball has been playing, for how long we have had October baseball and postseason action. Pete Alonso becomes the first player in Major League Baseball playoff history to hit a game-winning home run in the 9th inning or later when his team is trailing. It's a scenario that every young kid in their front yard, on their little league field, tries to reenact and get out there to see the vision of doing that one day. Down by 2 in the 9th inning, bases juiced, runners on the corners, as it was last night in Milwaukee, in delivering on the most significant of stages. We will set the stage, by the way, for the 2 National League Division Series that we have, and they are incredible. Division series between divisional rivals. It's the Mets and the Phillies. It's the Dodgers and the Padres. But let's update the World Series odds now, Joe, that we are on to the final 8 teams in the hunt for a World Series championship. As we shared yesterday, for the first time all year, off-season, preseason, regular season, postseason, the Yankees will enter the divisional round as the favorites to win a World Series in front of the Dodgers. That has not happened yet this season.
Yeah, this is going to be buckle up then, because this postseason should be very, very, it's already, it almost like a 162 game regular season. What does it mean, Ben? What does it mean?
It means that we have a big division round ahead. We will preview the DSs in the NL next.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in the set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people. What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Simply put, the only way to bet this is over/under win total. I love Tyronn Lue. I think he's one of the 5 best coaches in the league. But my dear friend George Sorlis told us to me a long time ago, you can't win if you don't got the talent. Unfortunately, I don't think the Clippers have the talent to match up.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
Would it make you feel better as a bettor or as a sports fan if they said after the game we were trying to cover the spread?
Oh, God. To say it out loud? Oh, my God, no.
So what,
to say it out loud? Oh, my God. You can't say that out loud. No, you can't even. You can't do that.
Okay, so what is the big deal either way?
Oh, play the game the right way.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Sunday Night Football, not really much of a matchup here. And the Bills looked so good up until this point. And, you know, to me, it's probably like a one-off for them.
The basic thing you have to do against the Ravens, force them to pass and try to use their weapons downfield, get them behind. Because if you can do that, then it takes Derrick Henry a little bit out of the game. But if you get them with momentum coming out of the gate, getting a long touchdown run on the first play.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
The division series around Major League Baseball. What a duo we have, a pairing of them in the National League. Division series, divisional rivals in both of our sets. Of course, the New York Mets rallying in historic fashion last night in Milwaukee. They advance for a matchup against the Philadelphia Phillies in the division round that starts tomorrow around MLB. So let's start with the divisional odds for the NLDS between Philadelphia and New York. The Phil's a pretty hefty favorite at minus 188. Philadelphia has been great in the expanded postseason, which of course started during the 2022 campaign. They have played in the NLCS each of these past 2 years. Of course, they played in a World Series 2 years ago. But they were the wild card team where Red October got an early start in Philly. Now they have earned the rest. And Joe, as we reach the division round in the MLB postseason with the expanded playoff format, this is the time where you just asked before the break. 162 games in the regular season, the long marathon that it is in MLB. What does it matter? Here's where the conversation intensifies, because if you are a wild card team, and we have seen, at least in the 3-6 matchups, divisional champs, wild card team needing it for the final 2 weeks, month of the regular season to get in, those wild card teams, the Tigers over the Astros in 2 games in Houston, the Mets get the last laugh over Milwaukee. The wild card teams have been great so far in MLB postseason action.
Ben, it feels like it's rinse and repeat here. We talk about this every postseason, and then we forget what short memories we have. The same thing last year with Arizona. We got to this point, and we were laughing like, well, there's no way Arizona's going to run a table here. Like, I mean, come on. You got to be – I mean, congratulations. You got lucky out of a 3-game set, but there's no way. There's no way you're going to end up running the table and win the National – well, I can make the same argument here for the New York Mets now against this Philadelphia team, can I? Who, by the way, Ben, Philadelphia in years past, in their successful seasons, usually did it the reverse way. They start slow and they finish playing their best baseball. I can make the argument Philadelphia played its best baseball early, and now I don't know what the hell you're going to get from them, which is worrisome. In the meantime, we have the Mets, who are doing exactly what the Phillies did on their way to a World Series title over the last couple of years, Ben, which is play their best damn baseball, get all the breaks, everything rolling your way right now. Nothing on paper tells us the Mets should win this series when you look at the starting pitching rotations here. But guess what? You counting out the Mets now? Because I certainly can't.
No, I don't think you can, Joe. How could you? You should not at this stage. But to Joe's point, the Philadelphia Phillies, in the month following the All-Star break, toward the end of August, were 12-20 after losing the opener of a set on August 23rd against the Royals. Then they started to play much better baseball to kind of find their way to make sure they held off both the Braves and the Mets in the National League East, and, of course, even contend for one of those 2 byes into the division round that we see here. In terms of the comparison between these divisional foes, Philadelphia won 7 of 13 against the Mets this year, but when New York needed to win games, the second to last series, or the second to last weekend, I should say, of the MLB regular season against Philadelphia, the Mets took 3 of 4 against the Phils. It put them in position to enter the final week knowing they just needed to win a few games against Milwaukee in the extended doubleheader set against Atlanta to get into the playoffs. That's exactly what they did. Game 1 tomorrow night at the Bank. Red October intensifies in the city of brotherly love. We will see what the decision is for the Mets starter. We know it's going to be Zach Wheeler on the other side for the Phils. And much like the division series price, as you saw, minus 188, Joe, in favor of the Fightins, it's minus 188 to start game 1 as well.
And let me just say this, Ben, because this broke just a little while ago, that the Mets are considering activating Kodai Senga for the National League Division Series. And quite honestly, Ben, how in the hell do you not? I mean, when you look at, Peterson's coming in relief last night for the first time in his career. I mean, they are running a little bit thin on arms because of how they've had to get to this point. And wouldn't it be interesting if Senga somehow makes it on to this roster. I guess, hey, listen, all the available arms is possible at this point because it's only going to get harder from here.
Sure.
So that will be very interesting.
Of course, you can make those roster updates entering each round in the MLB postseason. Now, from one divisional rivalry in the DS to another divisional rivalry, an in-state rivalry, in Southern California rivalry between San Diego and Los Angeles. For the third time in the last 5 MLB seasons, the Dodgers and the Padres meet in the National League Division Series. Throughout the regular season, the Padres won 8 of 13, but the Dodgers won the final 2 to clinch the National League West for the 11th time in the last 12 years. In 2020, in the COVID-shortened season, the Dodgers won a World Series. They swept the Padres in the NLDS. In 2022, in the start of the expanded playoffs, San Diego, as the wild card team, they beat the Dodgers in 4 games in the division series. San Diego would play in the NLCS and come up a little bit short against Philadelphia. The Dodgers are a division series favorite at -134, as you would expect. But, Joe, it seems the number's a little bit tighter than maybe we would have anticipated about a month ago.
And it, as well, it should be, because let's face it here. We talked about it last week, and we'll keep talking about it. The starting rotation for the Dodgers is thin, and I mean very thin. They got a best-of-5 series, Ben, and from the way I see it, the National League teams have back-to-back games twice. The American League teams only go back-to-back once. The Padres have even without Musgrove, who got hurt in that last start, they still have a much better starting rotation and are in better shape than what the Dodgers are. So it's going to be very interesting how the starting pitching works out here for the Dodgers.
We'll continue to look at these sets in our third hour to set the stage for the weekend, but a change in starting pitcher for the Dodgers. Jack Flaherty listed as the opener for Game 1 yesterday. Now it's Yoshi Yamamoto making the start for LA against Dylan Cease. More on the early line next.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. Brady, I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people. What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Simply put, the only way to bet this is over/under win total. I love Tyronn Lue. I think he's one of the 5 best coaches in the league. But my dear friend George Sorless told us to me a long time ago, you can't win if you don't got the talent. Unfortunately, I don't think the Clippers have the talent to match up.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
Would it make you feel better as a bettor or as a sports fan if they said after the game we were trying to cover the spread?
Oh, God. To say it out loud? Oh, my God, no.
So what,
to say it out loud? Oh, my God. You can't say that out loud. No, you can't do that.
Okay, so what is the big deal either way?
Oh, play the game the right way.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Sunday Night Football, not really much of a matchup here. And the Bills looked so good up until this point. And, to me, it's probably like a one-off for them.
The basic thing you have to do against the Ravens, force them to pass and try to use their weapons downfield, get them behind. Because if you can do that, then it takes Derrick Henry a little bit out of the game. But if you get them with momentum coming out of the gate, getting a long touchdown run to the first play.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
There's so much going on now in the opening few days of October. Playoff baseball, start of a new NFL weekend. College football continues. WNBA playoffs tonight as we change venues. But we remind you that first and foremost, when you reach the end of the week on the Early Line and Sports Grid, it is a football Friday. So we continue and begin our full Sunday slate preview for week number 5 of the National Football League. A couple of teams on the bye this weekend, Joe Ranieri, for the first time this season. So a slightly shorter slate on Sunday. Just 12 games as opposed to maybe the usual 14, or at least the last 2 weeks. We have had 13 with the doubleheader of Monday Night Football. So only 12 games, fine. But it starts bright and early. You wake up Sunday morning, you roll out of bed, you turn on your TV, and you look across the pond for the first London game of the season. The undefeated Minnesota Vikings taking on Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets. What a game we have, kicking at 9:30 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday. Minnesota, 2.5-point favorite across the pond in London. Total 40.5. The Jets off to a disaster last week in Denver, or against Denver, losing outright as more than a touchdown favorite. Minnesota, Joe, one of 2 remaining undefeated teams in the National Football League alongside the Chiefs. But unlike the Chiefs, Minnesota is the only perfect team against the number. They are also 4-0 ATS. Their last 3 victories outright as an underdog. Just the second time this year the Vikes have been booked as a favorite. The first since the opening Sunday of the year against the other New York team on the road in MetLife against the Giants. How do you see London playing out between the Jets and the Vikes?
So it's interesting. First of all, I'm shocked, Ben, this line has not gotten to a field goal or more, which is interesting because you know the public is running to the window to back Minnesota in this game here, right? There's no way that you can back Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets here, and yet this thing has been frozen at 2.5 all week long. Denver blitzed Aaron Rodgers last week, Ben, 43% of the plays. So 43%, they were bringing the house on them, and they could not figure it out. The problem is they're taking on a Minnesota Vikings team that leads the league in 51% blitz rates, the second highest in the NFL. What does that mean? It means Aaron Rodgers better figure out the answers to a blitz in a damn hurry here. Otherwise, they're going to be in trouble. Now, I look at it and say that was absolutely maybe the best thing to happen to him last week against Denver, because that was really the first time they've been under that kind of duress from a blitz.
Correct.
They've seen it now. They had a week to figure it out. And it's not like the quick release of Aaron Rodgers, the screen game, the quick passes to Garrett Wilson. Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, I have no doubt, will be much better off this week against the blitz than they were against Denver. And also on the flip side, this is going to be the best defense Sam Darnold has seen yet to that date. And I expect the Jets to make life very difficult for him as well. And we saw a little bit of regression in that second half against Green Bay, didn't we? Kind of forking the ball over a little bit, a little more of what we're used to from Darnold. I think this is a field goal game one way or the other, but if you think you'd be shocked that the Jets win this game outright, I would not be.
Yeah, I would not be either, Joe. This is a really big spot for Aaron Rodgers. There has been some drama, of course, in New York. You mentioned the quick passing game of number 8 for New York. Well, the cadence has been discussed. It led to 5 false start penalties last week against Denver. He had only been sacked 5 times, Aaron Rodgers, in the opening 3 games of the year. That was good news, of course, for the 40-year-old quarterback coming off a torn Achilles, because that was a huge issue even entering 2023, his first year in New York. He was sacked 5 times, as Joe alluded to, against the Broncos a week ago. Brian Flores' defense has been good. Minnesota, 4th best scoring offense, 4th best scoring defense. But to your point, Joe, Sam Darnold now faces the 2nd best passing defense in the NFL. The Jets only allowing about $128 per game. You could argue the quarterbacks they have played, and maybe I would hear it, especially since week number 2, the disaster that is Will Levis. Then you got Jacoby Brissett in the Patriots week 3. And last week, the rookie Bo Nix that led Denver into MetLife and picked up a win, throwing for only 60 yards. and still won a football game. But Sam Darnold, most passing touchdowns in the NFL, 11, the only guy into double digits entering week number 5. Going to be a good game on Sunday in London, and a short number. Hour 3 begins on this Football Friday as we continue our full Sunday preview next.